So, you need some tips on how to play LASH, huh? Well, I got you covered, baby. Now, I just want to say I'm not like the best LASH player. Okay, ranks got adjusted again. I'm normally around Ritualist 6, Emissary 1, so this isn't exactly accurate. The ranks have been crazy lately. But yeah, I am about a mid-tier LASH player, so I'm not like a pro or anything, but I know there's a lot of new people who have come in from the update, so I want to help some people out if they want to get some tips for the game. I'd say about half of these are things you could apply into the actual game too, not just on the LASH, so feel free to use these however you see fit in your games. Let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is this item right here, Majestic Leap. This item is such a godsend on LASH, because, I mean, I'll demonstrate it if you guys don't know what it does. Basically, press your active, go flying. If you press it again, you'll drop down. You can really move around the map. It's pretty simple. It's not very complicated, which is great because, you know, you want to be able to think about other things in this game. So it has a, what is that, 45-second cooldown. And the only downside is if you get shot with it, it won't activate for around 5 seconds. So you do have to be undercover to use it. So the main reason you want this item on LASH is because LASH is really not going to want to stay in lane for too long. You know, after about 10 minutes, you really want to be out of your lane, because if you don't start getting kills around that time, you're going to fall off pretty hard. So this thing is really going to help you, because look, if I go, say there's, you know, the two laners in there, we've got our wave somewhere here, right? Their wave is there. If I didn't have the item, you know, I'd have to go up, look for a grapple target, or like worst case, I'd have to grapple on the tower. And let's see, look how high I go. That's not very high. They could shoot you down pretty easy. They could see you pretty easily. So instead, if we grab our Majestic Leap and we say go over to a weird off angle like this, right? Actually, I guess this would be better because we can clear this. Majestic Leap up here. Do a little dash. Look how much more we can see with our ultimate. Look at that. It's just, you cover so much more ground. It's so helpful. And that's just one example. You know, there's just tons of places around the map which you could use this to greatly help your team in terms of fights. And of course, you know, the higher you are, the more your ground slam will do. So even more damage for your benefit. This thing's also great just for getting around, because I could reach this jump pad right now just doing this little jump, you know. Go grab, okay, I fucked it up, but you know what I mean. Like, grab bridge buff real quick, come back real easy. Lane partner doesn't even know I left. It took about like 7 seconds. But yeah, usually I don't recommend rushing this, obviously. It's a 32k item. It does get you almost to the green spike, but honestly, don't really prioritize green spike all too much on LASH. Go for your spirit most of the time, but obviously don't focus too much on the spike. It'll just happen naturally as you play. Just get what you need for your lane, and try to get this as soon as possible once the laning stage is over, because, I mean, look at this, watch. I don't even need the jump pad, man. I could just go whoop, little dash, and I'm already at blue lane. And I can start ganking and, you know, hit a grapple, go up their ult, slam down, hit the poor page who doesn't know what's coming in the face, and free up blue lane. I usually try to have this item by like 10 to 15 minutes, but that's not really set in stone. You know, get it whenever it feels good to in the game. You don't have to rush it. If you think, you know, you could get around the map just fine with like a stamina mastery or something, you know, right here. Honestly, it could work just as good if you're good with your movement and stuff. If you want to like prioritize damage firsthand before you get your movement items, that's definitely a possibility. You know, the grapple can do a lot. It's not useless, honestly. But yeah, that covers most of Majestic Leap. You know, use it for ganking, use it for getting good ults. Look how much you can see. I don't even have greater expansion right now. And yeah, just use it to get out of situations as well. Like, it's really, really good. Say I'm getting chased, you know, getting chased around the map. I go here, cut the corners so they can't see me. You know, get the cooldown off and go whoop. I'm gone. Oh yeah, I also forgot to show you guys this. If you go up and drop down, then jump, you'll go even farther forward. So you can really get some distance out of this thing. Like, look at that. I got all the way to doubles and I was basically on our side of the map. Like, it's so good. So good. This thing's honestly really good just in general. I don't think you need to focus it on a movement hero. You know, I've seen Mo and Krill's fucking, you know, Majestic Leap my ass and then press 4 and I'm fucking dead, you know? But that's a rarity. I don't think you should try to do that on Mo and Krill too often. But yeah, that basically covers Majestic Leap, but let's move on. So this next one's going to deal with fighting. Now, I think blue lane might be the best to give an example. Okay, second tip. I tried to explain this one time, wasn't really sure how it went. Basically, I've set up a kind of team fight scenario, right? We got 4 teammates, 4 enemies, and then there's me. So let's pretend I'm coming in, right? I'm coming in from here, whatever it may be, zipline, majestic leap, you know how it goes. Basically, I'm gonna get up here, and boom, pause the game. Now, if we look at this scenario, we have people fighting, right? But there is more to it than that. I like to break it down. I like to break it down into 3 rings. Now, the first ring, I like to call this center. This is the hot spot, right? This is where you don't want to be in a team fight, because every single person involved can kind of see you if you're in the center, right? So you really don't want to be here as LASH, because you don't have very much survivability as LASH. Once your cooldowns are gone, you know, you're kind of done for. So you really don't want to be in the middle very often at all, only to get a pick on someone if you're really confident you could get out. So that's the first ring covered, right? That's the center. This is where you don't want to be. And then the second ring is kind of like the edge of the fight, but like they're still fighting. It's kind of dangerous, but you have ways out, right? You have teammates, you can grapple off enemies, and you can make escapes pretty easily, as long as you're not being focused for some reason. And I think this place is ideally where you'd want to be as LASH, because you can make a lot of plays here. You can go in and get out easily. You could set up for a good ult if you're keeping track of everyone. And you can really escape into the third ring, which I like to call the safety zone. So this is basically this any safe area around the team fight that no one's really fighting in. So, you know, here, this whole area right here, this could be the safety zone. Over here, no one's over there. It's a good place to come in from, actually. And then over there, it's kind of, you know, that's not really safe because it's their side of the map, but you get the idea. If everyone's fighting, they wouldn't see you over there. Honestly, the only reason you'd want to be in the safety zone would be to either engage from or retreat to. You don't want to stay in there long. You want to go into the second zone, which is around the perimeter of the fight, because your job as LASH is to get picks and to help your team and while setting up for your ultimate. So you want to stay around here as much as you can. So let's look at the setup I have here. We have a guy in the far back, right by their base guardian on their side of the map. You probably don't want to jump that guy because we'll jump behind the whole team and they'll probably kill us. So let's look over here. We have a teammate fighting a guy. This could be okay, honestly. This could be okay. In this scenario, I know how many people are here, but in a real game, I probably wouldn't. So I honestly wouldn't go for it just because it's by this veil. It's by this shop in this scenario, and there's another veil here anyone could come out of. So it really depends, but I don't know. That's kind of a 50-50 right there. I don't know if I'd go for that every time. But if we look over here, I think this is probably the best scenario. You know, he's all on his own. He's not in the middle. No one's really going to be looking. They're going to be focused on their fights. This guy's going to be thinking about engaging. You know, this guy is close to my side of the base, right? And he's in the second ring. So I have plenty of time to go to the safety ring if I need to. Because even if this guy manages to see me, I can just back out pretty easy, you know. Wouldn't be too hard. And then off of this guy, if I ground slam him, right? Let me demonstrate. If I ground slam this guy, right? Boom, boom. There's a good chance, you know, depending on the angle I come in from, that he could run this way. You know, because if I came from here, he's gonna want to back up, right? So I could lead that into a potential ultimate. Say I just grappled off him right there. Okay, that's a bad example, but you know, if I played that better, I could get a pretty decent ultimate off of that. You really want to goat people into going where you want, which is why the second ring is so good, because there's kind of minimal risk involved. You know, you don't have much risk hitting this guy once, you're making him back up, grapple, you know, hit someone with an ultimate, displace them, and set up your team fight for victory. I'll try to include a diagram on screen of what I'm talking about. Hopefully it makes sense, but yeah, you really got to think about your positioning when you're in a team fight, especially if they have like someone who has slowing hex or a knockdown or curse. You know, you gotta really think about all that. But yeah, that's the main point I'm trying to get across. Try to play on the edge of the fight, but don't be too out of the safety zone, because if you do see an opportunity, you won't have very much time to execute it. You know, you gotta be quick, because, you know, if I was over there, that guy could have been all the way over there by now. So try to stay just behind your teammates, but not too far. That's basically the advice. You always want to orbit the fight like you're a moon to a planet, if that makes sense. You want to circle around, but you don't want to collide into the planet. If that's a good way to describe it, I guess you could say. I don't know. But yeah, I hope that made sense, and I think that's probably one of the most important tips, because you could apply that to many different scenarios. You know, it doesn't really matter what character you are, because if you apply that to any team fight, you could most likely have more success if you're not just in the middle being an idiot. Okay, our third tip is going to do with our grapple. Now, we already covered this a little bit with the last tip, but I think it's more important to highlight this more than anything. So when you're fighting, right, this will be easy to demonstrate in lane stage. Unfortunately, I don't know how to summon minions, so that's kind of not good, but pretend there's minions here, right? So we have our line here, line of guys, their line of guys, right? So now pretend I'm coming in, you know, shooting the minions, dodging shots, all that good stuff. And you notice, if you play a bit of LASH, you might have already thought, hey, the minions are right here. I can grapple and get an easy pick. Well, you know, attack. And you know, that's good. That is good. But did you think about when you land? So in this scenario where both of them are at the bridge on each side, it'd be fine, because you could just grapple right back out if you have an extra charge, or if you saved it and you just like dashed in, boom, charge out, right? So that's an example of a kind of ideal situation right there. You know, we have both waves, tons of things to grapple off of, you know, even your teammate if he's around. But let's view a scenario where it's not so favorable. So pretend their wave is like here, right? And our wave has been defeated, so we're coming back here, we're playing safe, and our wave is, you know, coming down the zip line. So it's not here yet, but we have noticed that they're kind of aggro, right? So they're playing around a little in front of their wave. So if I jump in, right, I'm gonna use Majestic because I don't have a target. So if I jump in, you know, I hit the guy, and I turn around, uh-oh, there's nothing there, and I use my grapple, oh no, and even if I didn't use my grapple, there's nothing. I can't reach it. So now that we're in this situation, a couple of things can happen. Either our teammate will realize what we've done if we didn't communicate, and he'll come over, and you know, maybe like 60% of the time this will work, you'll be okay. And in beginning stage of lane, it's usually fine, right? Because they don't have ultimates, and you know, you can get away kind of easy. But say once ultimates are unlocked, I do it, I come down and I'm fighting a Wraith, she ults me, I get slammed down, I'm kind of screwed. You know, I don't have any way out, and I'm basically getting caught. That's at least like 2/3 of my health bar right there if I get hit by that. So once you're in this situation, you can't really do too much unless you like, you know, you do some stupid shit. Like if I hit that, I could have bounced up and out, but it's very situational dependent. So you really just want to plan before you go in. You go, honestly, if I was in this situation, right, that I just demonstrated, they're right here playing in front of wave, they're being aggressive, taking cover. Ideally, I would just wait for my wave, right? And then use that to go in and out. So ideally, in my version of events, I would have my wave here that just landed full HP. I would go in, hit him, and then go back out. That's how I would do it, but there's another way you could do it. You could ask your teammate to come in, or you can just wait for them to push up and use your Guardian. Because if they break your wave, right? Say they break the wave. Actually, this is good. Say my wave does come up, right? And they're so good at defeating my wave that my wave is gone in basically like 3 seconds. Now if I'm thinking about this, right, in the middle of the game, and I realize this, then I really shouldn't take the first grapple I see here, because I know they'll probably break most of the minions by the time I've completed my attack. So in this situation, now that we've thought about it a bit more, it would most likely be best to either use the Guardian or a teammate to initiate, unless we want to do some movement, you know, something like that, then get out, you know, with the grapple. That would probably be the best course of action. But basically what I'm trying to convey is you always want an escape plan, whether it be grapple, Majestic leap, or just regular movement. You always want a way out. You always got to think about how you're going to get out before you get in, because if you think about getting in and you have no way out, then it's over. And you've just fed. Okay, next tip. Let's talk about ganking. Now, ganking is going to be one of your priorities as LASH. You're going to want to do this basically whenever you have the opportunity, so keep an eye on your mini-map, look for one whenever, but you don't want to leave your lane partner, remember that. You don't want to leave them high and dry in a 1v2, that is not going to help. That's just going to kind of piss them off, I'm not going to lie. I usually do like to ask permission to go gank first, but honestly, I don't know, it depends on your lobby's vibe, I'm not going to lie. But I'd say the safest time to gank is when laning stage is over, which is usually about 8 to 10 minutes, because after that your teammate is usually accepting of you leaving the lane to go do something else. So let's say we've done that, right? We've hit 8 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, you know. When should we leave? You shouldn't just leave as soon as the timer hits. You wanna prepare before you leave, right? So a good rule of thumb is always have your wave pushed up and make sure your teammate isn't on a low amount of HP. That's kind of not controllable, honestly, but it's a good rule to try at least have them healthy before you leave. And then if you can, try to get the enemy low before you leave. So your teammate will have an easier time defending while you're off in whatever lane helping, because that'll be a real help to them. You know, they don't have to 1v2 as hard. So just try to, you know, push wave out, get a health advantage if you can, and tell your teammate, most importantly, because if you just leave, he'll probably be pissed at you, and you don't want that. Alright, now that we've set up to leave, we go over. You know, it's pretty simple. Usually use a jump pad. Unless you're ganking the other side of the map, use the teleporter, but you know. Alright, so now that we're here, right? We're here, we're looking for the pick, right? We're looking for the pick. We kind of want to follow the same rule that we did with the team fight. Obviously, it's a lot less serious, there's not as many players involved, and you have usually a numerical advantage, so you're probably going to be okay to just go in and hit them. You'll most likely get out, right? But you still kind of want to be mindful of who's around, because the other team could be ganking the lane too, so you never know. Just be careful. You know, you don't want to get caught out during a gank, because you'll look like an idiot, and you'll have done it for nothing. You'll get nothing out of it, your lane will suffer, so just be careful. Make sure you don't die, and you gank at a good time. You don't want to go into an unfavorable fight. But once you complete the gank, right, you don't want to stay here too long, because your teammate's still fighting a 1v2 most likely. So you do want to go back to him pretty quick. You want to make it fast and dirty. You know, get in, get out, hit a little ultimate, and then go back to your teammate. You know, obviously it depends on the game. You know, your teammate might be able to 1v2, I don't know. I'm not there, and I haven't played the game. It's really dependent on your team. Just know that it's going to take some experience to get used to, and you're going to fail, but it's fine. It's not really a big deal, it's just a video game. Alright, actually a little bonus activity. Now that we're out and about, right, we've left our lane, we just ganked someone. Feel free to hit some boxes on the way back, you know? You always want to take from the enemy. Make sure you take stuff from their side on your way back. See, I'm making my way back to my lane, hitting a couple of guys, and oh wait, hang on. I just realized, you know, we're back in our lane, and they most likely don't know I'm up here. So if they're shoving my guy, I can kind of just go in, you know, boom, boom, say there's minions, boom, go up, slam, or ult them into tower. You know, there's a couple situations that could happen there. But, you know, as you're going through the map, make sure you're always taking from the enemy. You always want to be taking a box or a camp if you can afford it. You know, don't do it if it's going to cost you anything. But if it's free to just, you know, hit this on the way, you know, which it probably isn't, but if it is, then do it. Always take stuff from the enemy. That's a good tip right there. And of course, another really good time to take stuff is when you've got an advantage in lane. Say I just killed some guy, you know, I could take this camp pretty easy, wouldn't be hard, you know, it'd fall pretty quick, and the other guy usually can't do anything. Yeah, whenever you have an advantage, you always want to steal. That's one way to get a real good advantage on any character in this game, is just steal, steal, steal. Pretend you're like Rem's little minions. You just gotta go take all the sinners, you know? I just killed some guys, so now I'm gonna take the sinners, and they can't do anything about it. And then I get out lickety-split with this jump pad. And I take the buff. So yeah, that's usually the main gameplay loop with LASH, is ganking and stealing. So do with that what you will. Usually you want to work the stealing into your gank rotations whenever it's convenient, and then try to be sneaky when you sneak up on guys, because they don't know you're there. It's really easy to kill them. Oh, I should say this. Don't leave empty lanes. That is a #1 rule in Deadlock. This applies to everything. If you are thinking about ganking, but let's say this lane isn't pushed up and minions can go through, clear the wave first. You don't want to let them get your tower. That is #1 rule. Always clear the wave before you do anything. You don't want to work on a disadvantage. Okay, now that we covered what we're going to be doing, you should probably go lab some movement, I'm not going to lie, because I can't really cover crazy movement. It'd be kind of hard to do that in a video like this. There's so many things you can do. I just did some tech right there, you know, into this, into wall jump. You can do so many things around the map. It's really going to be tough to put that in one tip, but all I'm going to say is practice some routes. Here's one of my favorites, for example. I do this when I run urn. I'll grab the urn, go here, and if it's clear, I'll go down here. You know, it's a pretty quick way, but you know, it's obviously not a god tip. You know, they could jump me pretty easy coming out of here, so you really want to experiment with the map and do your own movement stuff. Oop, messed that up, but yeah, just experiment. That's the tip. Just experiment with the map, experiment with some movement. There's some great videos out there to get you to be a movement god, So yeah, that's the tip. Practice your movement, baby. Alright, this one's gonna sound pretty in character for LASH, kind of asshole-ish, but you should honestly just let people die. Because honestly, you do have a lot of advantages being a movement character like this. You can save a lot of teammates, but you shouldn't try to save them at the cost of your own life, because you're just gonna detriment yourself in the process. I'll give an example. So let's say there's a McGinnis, oh, let me hide this. There's McGinnis pushing this, pretend the Guardian's down. He's pushing Walker, right? And I'm here, he didn't clear the wave for some reason, so I'm clearing his wave, right? I noticed that he's gonna get jumped. Now, I can make the decision to save him, or not, depending on how the team is going against the enemy team. You know, there's a lot of factors involved, but we don't have a wave, right? He'll be up there all on his own. They'll most likely have a wave coming, and someone to defend the Walker. Maybe even 2 people. Now, if I'm feeling ballsy and I have my ultimate, maybe I could save him, but it's really, I don't know, it's a really hard call. It really would depend on the game state. So you really gotta weigh that when you try and save someone. You don't want to just try and go in there and look like a hero for no reason, because you're just gonna get yourself killed and you're gonna be behind on souls. So you really gotta weigh it in your head, you know, put it with your game experience. That's really the best way to describe it. It's a case by case basis, really. It's not really a quantifiable thing. But yeah, before you save someone, always think about where the enemy could be. You know, do you have an advantage? Could you call a teammate? Could you do XYZ? There's many things you can decide. And even if you do have ultimate, you know, do you want to waste it on saving this one guy? You know, is there a team fight happening soon? Could I better use it there? Are we going to take mid boss? There's so many things. So just really think about it before you try and save someone, because it's usually better to just let them die if they're screwed. Okay, this next one is a really good thing. Right, this is pretty important, because I see a lot of early players doing this mistake, and it's kind of, it's a little silly, but I get where they're coming from, right? Basically, the problem is that they don't use their ultimate as often as they should. Now, the main reason is because, you know, they're usually worried about wasting it. You know, they want to get the big 5-man or 4-man. They would like that. You know, that's kind of why you play LASH. You want the big ults, the big team swings and all that. But you know, if you're not using your ultimate, then what's the point of having it? That's a very good question. So you should use your ultimate. You know, you don't have to hit the 5 or 6-man every time. So for demonstration, you know, we're team fighting here. Let's spawn one more guy just so it's, yeah. Alright, so we got like 3 dudes there, and you know, honestly, they'd be out of position in this team fight because they're right by all my teammates. So if I notice this, I have 2 choices to make. I could either ult them now, or I can wait for everyone to group up and hope they group up and then ultimate them, which is kind of a gamble because most people don't do that in higher advanced lobbies, especially if they know a LASH has ult. So, you know, most times if this is a really good scenario, you know, 3 guys right here, that's half their team. If I throw them into my backline, you know, they're probably dead, and then the enemy team has to fight like a 3v6, 3v5, you know, depending on the scenario. So it's usually worth it to just do this on like 3 to 2 dudes. Okay, they got caught, but you know what I mean, right? See, look how fast he died. Look how fast he died. So pretend the Guardian was my teammate shooting him. They would have all died very fast. So it's usually worth it to get a couple picks in a fight if you can't secure the 5-man, because honestly, displacing enemies is such a strong move. That is why Paradox is so strong. She can just displace anyone at any time, basically. Her fucking ultimate is so short with the cooldown. Yeah, if you get anyone out of position, they're dead. Even if I wanted to screw this guy over, I could, because now he's in the middle. Now everyone has to fight him. Like, look at that. Look how easy it was. You know, if you target, like, their big bad on the team, some wraith with, like, 50k souls. Like, say you do it, you throw them in, you have, like, curse, throw the curse on top of them, they're basically done for. So yeah, what I'm trying to convey is it's not about, like, the number of guys, it's about the effectiveness of your player choice. So yes, basically use your ultimate whenever you see an advantage, because if I take out these 2 guys, they gotta fight a 4v6 potentially, so it'll be very good for my team. You want to always try to swing the fight in your favor as LASH. That is his job. That is why he's here. You know, Deadlock is really a numbers game, so always try to do a couple calculations before you enter a fight. It'll probably greatly help your outcome, at least in my experience. Okay, this one's a quick one. Use teleporters. It's just, everyone needs to know this. Just use the damn teleporters, man. Take some time to go around the map and learn the teleporter locations. I can't tell you how many lanes I've saved and how many fights I've turned just because I did this. Just because I did this. I just walked in and I teleported. Now I'm here all the way at green. They have no idea I'm here. You know, they're say this lane's been shoved. Boom, come in with the ult. Put them in the tower. They're dead. It's so simple. You can help your team so much with it. You can do so many shenanigans, you know. If you know where the teleporter is and the enemy doesn't, you could escape super easy. Like there's just so many ways the teleporter helps you just in general with this game that honestly you should learn all the teleporters. You know, they're not hidden, they're on the map right here, right here. So yeah, learn the teleporters and use them. That's my almost last tip. Alright guys, last tip for the video, and it's gonna be about mid boss. Ooh. Alright, so we're gonna talk about positioning in the pit. Hello. That kinda hurt. I'm sure you know we can swing the mid boss a lot with our ultimate, right? That's why we're here in the mid boss fight. That's why we're important. So we really don't want to get caught out when the enemy team comes in. Now I'm gonna assume, right, from my demonstration here, that our team is the one in the pit taking the mid boss. So we have time to prepare and think about where we want to stand when that rejuve does drop, or when the enemy team comes in. So usually you don't want to be here because everyone's going to be looking here. The rejuve is going to be falling. It's going to be chaos. There'll be like 50 ults going down. So stop. So it's kind of the same scenario that we did the team fight, you know? Everyone's here. This is the core of the fight. You don't want to be here. You want to be on the outskirts, you know, in the second ring, like I said earlier. All right, let's look at mid boss real quick. So you'll most likely be standing here. Honestly, that's one of the most common spots to ult from in mid boss. Your best scenario would be up here, but that's kind of a rarity. Honestly, it doesn't happen very much. But this is kind of the primo spot, is what I would say if the veil wasn't right here. Because why would you expose yourself here? Like, right? Because if they come in, they can see you pretty easily. It's not like, see, look how close. It's not a huge distance. So you really want to conceal your presence because you can totally change the whole fight. So I recommend standing in the veil and just kind of waiting. You know, and just wait for them, you know. Listen, obviously, because there's usually a zip line right here that they can take down right to you. But most times I'd say this spot is pretty good on either side, and then once they come in, you know, wait for them to do something first. Wait for them to get focused on your team, and then swoop in, do the ult, get them away from rejuve, throw them like over there, and then take the rejuve. Honestly, the even better spot, now this is if you know the team and you're confident they won't come this way, but honestly it's a gamble every time. But one of these holes is a really good spot for mid boss. It's pretty self-explanatory, you know, you're up high, they don't get to see you at all. You can instantly cast it once you drop down there, but this is honestly a rarity spot. It's like privilege, you know. You don't get this spot very often because most teams will look for it and they'll probably come down from here anyway looking for their own advantage. Because this is good for anyone, you know. If you drop down in here on top of the guy in mid boss, you know, you have height advantage and you get the surprise. So yeah, you're not gonna be doing it from here too much, but if you can do it, that's probably the best spot for it. But I usually do recommend staying around here, or if you're confident, you know, just stay here, look for it, get a really quick ult, and then get rid of them. There is another place right here underneath, but I honestly don't like this spot. It's really hard to see, you know, where everyone is, and they could honestly still see you. So I don't really recommend doing this. Also, you have to get height, so you'd probably have to jump up and then like do the ult like that, which could cost a precious second where someone takes a rejuve. So you really want to make sure you're up in one of these two spots or here if your team's good. I mean, obviously you're gonna have to play around the team's ultimates. Make sure you do that. Don't like ult the dynamo into your team and then he kills everyone. That's just gonna make everyone mad, which is why I like to try to not throw them into my team. I like to throw them near an exit so they're as far away from the rejuve as possible. Then you can just go down, secure it, wait for a parry, secure it again, something like that, you know. That's how I like to do it, but there's other ways to do it, but you know, that's my preferred method. But yeah, mid boss isn't too complicated, at least compared to the rest of the game. It really just comes down to practice with all this stuff. You really just gotta practice and keep in mind what you're doing throughout the whole game, because you always want to be learning, you always want to try new things and try to get an advantage wherever you can. That is the enemy walker. And I guess little bonus tip at the end here, yeah, always try to learn. That is how you improve a deadlock. If you're just mindlessly raging at the game because you're losing, you're not gonna progress. You know, at least think about things before you do them. But yeah, I hope you guys got something out of this. I hope it was, it made sense, because I'm not really great at explaining things, but I hope you guys understood what I was saying, because I don't convey myself very well in a tutorial-like manner. So I hope you guys got something out of it, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.